with our thoughts, we make the world. And that was from the Buddha. The reality of man is his thought, is one of the Baha'i teachings. So what you fill your mind with, how you live inside yourself, is what will guide your life and guide your emotions and guide your sense of why are you here? Who are you really? One of the things that I've heard from people that I've worked with around the world, like people, inmates in prison, especially people that are there for life after an act of violence, they've said to me, thank you for introducing me to myself. Because some of them never knew who they were. One of the ways we can get to know ourselves is through cultivating what I call, what the Virtues Project describes as a routine of reverence. Our soul is longing for food just like our bodies, and we need to feed ourselves on a regular basis. Let me share with you that when I was a teenager, I had lost the intimacy that I felt with God when I was a small child. My first memory was of walking around our backyard, sort of circumambulated the garden when I was 5, and saying a prayer and saying, God, when I grow up, please let me help people. And I'm sure you heard my prayer. I had a very intimate relationship with God. It wasn't all that healthy sometimes, because when my mother would ask me a question and I didn't want to tell her the truth, I think to myself, God knows the truth. I don't have to tell her. One time I'd taken a toy away from my brother and I held it behind my back. And she asked me, do you have your brother's toy? And I knew that she knew, so I just went, no. And I thought, God knows the truth. Well, as I got older, I kind of lost that sense. And I started questioning my faith. And I got to a point where, as an adult, there were many times where I prayed and I felt like it didn't get past the ceiling. Then there came a time where I was going through a very testing time. And I felt as though I had lost my way. And one night I was walking back and forth in my bedroom and I was crying out to God and asking him to bring me some sense of his presence. And all of a sudden I felt this tenderness around me. And everything in my life changed in that moment. It was a real defining moment for me because I actually felt the presence of God. And it guided me for the rest of my life, all these other decades that I've lived. So I want to share with you that one of the first ways to prepare to have a rich inner life, to have a rich prayer life, or reflective life, or contemplative life, is to heal whatever inside yourself keeps you from feeling worthy. Because you need to know that you are worthy of God's love. You were loved before you were even born. You were chosen to be in this world right now at this particular time for the virtues that were deposited within you as a trust. And those virtues are God's gift to you. And your gift to God is, what do you do with those virtues? How do you cultivate them? How well do you use them? And they're like muscles. They get stronger as they're used. And if they're not used, they're quite weak. And so we always have the choice to say, I'm going to call on my courage. I'm going to pray for grace. I'm going to pray for kindness. Help me to call on unity in this situation. So there are many ways that we can turn. But I think the first thing is to know that you're worthy of having a relationship with the divine. I had a friend once who was really studying the Baha'i faith with me. And we were in a study circle. and we were talking about prayer. And she said, I never really asked God for anything because I just don't think my little life is worth his attention. And I said to her, do you even know how loved you are? Do you know that God is closer to you than your own life's vein? He created you because he wanted you here. And he would love to have a conversation with you. Because in all the holy texts, it talks about prayer as a conversation with God. Now, often we use revealed prayers. We are also told in the Baha'i writings and other teachings that prayer is a conversation. So when we said that, she literally slid off the couch and got on her knees and started to cry. And she said, I never knew that I was worthy, that he would care. And her prayer life began to deepen after that point. Friends, I've come to believe that just as our research says that we only use about 10% of our intelligence, I think we only use maybe 1% of our spiritual capacity, our spiritual power. And so I want to get into some tools to help you develop that power and develop that capacity. So first of all, if you want an intimate relationship with God, which is the same as an intimate relationship with yourself, you need to shift into that language of virtues by thinking of yourself as a person who has all the virtues and potential. And even if you do something you deeply regret, you treat it as a teachable moment. You ask for forgiveness, and then you choose a virtue you're going to practice differently. So with that sense that you are here to learn, and even your worst test can be a great learning. I don't know why this story comes up, but I was in a prison in Western Australia giving a virtues workshop to the women there. And I didn't realize they were not mandated to come. The room was just packed with inmates. And they all wanted to come because they're very curious. What's this woman going to talk about to do with virtues? And in comes the alpha female. She's like that she's the one in control. She swaggers into the room, and it's like the women parted to let her through. And she really had attitude. Well, I started the workshop and I thought, I need to get this woman engaged. And so I asked for volunteers to do a virtues pick with me, which we're actually going to do later together. And I said, I would appreciate it if you would come and volunteer. And she said, okay, doesn't bother me. And she and myself and one other person sat before the others and we did a virtues pick. And I went first to model how do you do this. And the way you do it is the other two people in your sharing circle are quiet as each person shares, and it's receptive silence, listening. So she listened to me. I had a poster of the virtues on the wall, and she, like the other woman, she said she was asked to give me a virtues acknowledgement, and she did, and I was quite surprised. She said something about my idealism, and she appreciated that. When it was her turn, she reached into the bag and she pulled out forgiveness. And she read the forgiveness card, and it says, I'm paraphrasing, even though I wrote it, I can't remember all the words, but it was something to do with, I can even forgive myself for something I deeply regret if I have faith in myself to change, and I choose to make that change. And she just broke down in tears, pouring down her face. Now, this woman was an Aboriginal woman whose daughters started being abused sexually by the same people in the community that had abused her as a child. And one night she got very drunk and she went and assassinated all these sexual abusers, the four people, the four men. And that's why she was in prison for life. And this woman, I saw her transform before my eyes because she said, what I did was unforgivable. But maybe I have hope now that God could someday forgive me. And I know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And she turned to the virtues poster and she said, I cannot raise my own daughters, but I can raise every woman that comes into this prison. And she goes running down the hall and tells the warden that everybody needs a copy of the Family Virtues Guide. But I've seen this kind of transformation just from realizing that she is worthy of forgiveness, that we are worthy of the love of our Creator. Okay, so how do you nurture your soul on a regular basis? I learned to cultivate this capacity for reverence. I started in my 30s, my late 30s, and it has become a real lifestyle for me and a complete awakening as to how much guidance there is when we turn to Spirit for it. So one of the quotes that Dara's going to have in the chat box is from the Baha'i teachings. It's from Abdu'l-Baha. He says, if the eye of inner vision be opened, 100,000 clear proofs will be seen. If the eye of inner vision be opened. And he speaks quite often about inner vision. So what is that? First of all, to be able to open yourself to receive pure guidance. And that beautiful prayer that began our fireside today, purify my heart, illumine. No, it was, oh God, give me a pure heart. And that is in all the scriptures of the world. So the way we do that is, I know my friend Dave sitting there, he calls it his hour of power, where he exercises his body and he also exercises his soul and has a routine of reverence. We all need a routine. We need a habit. Just like you eat every day, you need to find a time during the day or the evening where you can be undisturbed. This is not easy for young moms, but they can do it. They set boundaries with their children about the quiet hour. And you need to take on, first of all, you need to set that sacred time, one that works for you. For me, it's the early morning. You need sacred time and you need to create sacred space. That can be a place where you sit with books beside you, with something beautiful in front of you, flowers or a candle. For some, it's a prayer shawl. For some, it's a walk in a place of beauty. And oh, okay. So, and then you choose your RPMs. Now, RPMs means, I don't know what exactly it means, but it means getting a car going. Well, the RPMs get us going on a daily basis. And they stand for read something that inspires you, even just a single verse. In fact, it's better to read a single verse with joy and radiance than read wearily all the scriptures of God. And that's according to Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith. So even if you just read one verse and you take it in, pray, whatever that means to you. For some of you who may not believe in a personal God, maybe it is for you to just think of what is beautiful to you, what is powerful to you. In the 12-step programs, they talk about your higher power. You need to understand there is something greater than yourself that is there to help you. The M, RPM, is for meditation. I'm going to share with you a number of ways to meditate. And then the S stands for service. Every day we get a chance to pray through the way we live, through service. When let me tell you another story. I came down with severe post-polio in my 50s, right after the Virtues Project had started, pretty quickly after that. And I had to stop traveling around the world and for a while, and I was very ill. And one day I really felt like I couldn't breathe. And I went out to the living room and I went into my prayer corner and I said, God, help me. I don't know what to do. Am I supposed to prepare to go to the next world? And I had been part of the post-polio or any kind of energy illness is that you get brain fog. And because of my brain fog, my meditation was cut off. I couldn't do visual, I couldn't do auditory, I couldn't concentrate enough to receive any meditation or guidance, which was a big loss to me. But what happened that day was I heard this voice and it said, and it shocked me because I wasn't used to it anymore. And it said, I will give you 10 rules for health. Write them down and follow them. And then I started writing as fast as I could. I just was like taking dictation. And all of these 10 rules for health were part of my healing from that energy disease, from post-polio. And one of them was pray every hour. They all started with a P. Purify your life. Practice the presence. And one was pray every hour. And I'm thinking, isn't that a bit much? And of course, whoever was talking to me heard me and said, now let your life be a prayer. The way you eat every day, the way you interact with people, let it be a prayer, the way you live. And it didn't mean taking out the prayer book every single hour. And so if we think of our life as a prayer, we need to start out realizing that the day is for us to be of service. And that is our highest expression of ourselves, is when we're serving. Serving the ones we love, serving ourselves, taking care of ourselves, and finding a way to reach out to others who need us, who need a listening ear, who need to share a meal, who need to hear some teachings that you want to share with them. And so the RPMs is a little formula for how to create a routine of reverence. Now, there are many ways to meditate. And one of the ways, like you have a different learning style for everyone. Everyone has a different learning style. And so there are times where when you meditate, you're going to picture something. Something will come into your mind. And one way to start that, if you haven't done it before, is to close your eyes and think of a place. In fact, I'd like you to do that right now. Think of a place that you've been that was very, very beautiful and meaningful to you. Maybe it was a place connected with your faith. Maybe it was a place in a forest or by the ocean. And let yourself be there. Let yourself feel the air, the temperature of the air. Is it warm or is it cool? And what do you smell there? Is there a fragrance? What kind of sounds do you hear? And in this place of beauty, let yourself imagine someone coming to you from a distance. And as they come closer, it may be a holy figure. It may be an ancestor who's gone on before you. Let them come to you and ask them a question. It could be as simple as, what is important for me to know at this moment? This figure may want to give you a gift. So hold out your hand and allow yourself to receive a gift. Take that with you as you gently come back to yourself by breathing. Notice your breath. So I'm wondering if any of you were able to envision a place where you could go within your own mind. Maybe you could put something in the chat box about that. That kind of sprang itself on me. I wasn't planning to do a guided meditation, but that's one of the ways you can do it, is visually. So if anyone had was able to see that place, that special place, would you write something in the chat box?
Then there were a couple of the Shrine of Abdu'l-Baha, Jasper, and a particular meadow at Yellowstone.
Sorry, my light just flashed off. Anybody else want to share?
The chat box is closed during your sharing time. And
Okay,
Bashi.
that's fine. As I went straight to a place in Israel called Bashi. Friends, I apologize for that. I wasn't aware of how it works. One of the tools that is very important for people who are journalers, who like to write down their thoughts, is to use a journal as a form of prayer. Journaling prayer means that you write something to God or to someone in the spiritual realm, and you wait for an answer and you write it down. I've often done this in groups where they weren't expecting to have any kind of an experience, but they write a letter to God and then they write a letter back to themselves as a response. And it's been, for me, that as a regular part of my practice, is to journal what is most important in my heart. One of the quotes that I want to share with you is from Psalm 62:8 from the Torah, which is, trust in him at all times, pour out your heart to him, hold nothing back. Now, friends, there was a prayer that Baha'u'llah wrote, and I guess in a sense that is journaling. I don't mean to put a term on it, but a prayer that he said and he wrote it down, called the Fire Tablet. And in this tablet, he poured out his anguish as a messenger of God who was receiving so much pain, imprisonment, and persecution. And whenever a messenger of God comes, humanity reacts with anger, with resistance, and crucifixion or imprisonment. And so when he was going through this painful time, the messenger of God himself said to God, I'm going to read a little bit of that tablet. He said, Baha is drowning in a sea of tribulation. Where is the ark of thy salvation, O Savior of the worlds? This youth is lonely in a desolate land. Where is the rain of thy heavenly grace, O bestower of the worlds?
Mm.
To me, he was saying, I'm lost, I'm drowning.
Mm.
I'm so lonely. Where are you, God? And how does the Lord respond to him? The next line is from God speaking to Baha'u'llah. And he says, O Supreme Pen, we have heard thy most sweet call in the eternal realm. And he goes on to explain all this pain that this messenger of God is experiencing when he says, were it not for calamity, how would the sun of thy patience shine, O light of the worlds? And he goes on and on to show all these virtues that are being brought into the world through this sacrifice. Now, the reason I'm saying that to you is that when you pray, I don't know if you're like me, but I used to think I had to be in a really good mindset to be able to pray. I had to be on my best behavior. Well, I've since learned that it's very important for you to pray whatever is real. Pray your anxiety, pray your anger, pray your sense of justice. And this will be answered because you will be given an answer. God is always there listening. The spiritual realm is there listening. I don't always feel like the creator of the universe is responding to me, but the way the world is set up, there's what I call the A team that everybody has. In the Quran, the Holy Quran, Muhammad speaks of the two angels that we are born with, one at our foot and one at our head, one at our feet and one at our head. And he says that there is one angel to watch over us and one angel to record our lives. You know, it's all being recorded. But we are told in many scriptures, including the Baha'i scriptures, that there are many, many angels and many holy beings ready to assist us at any moment, including our ancestors, the people that go on to the next world. And so I've come to understand, I know some of you heard me say this before, that if we do not pray for divine assistance, and we do not pray for our loved ones that have gone on, and we do not ask for their help, expecting it to be really there, we're promoting unemployment after death. Because that's their job. That's what they're there to help us. And whenever we turn to them, we are going to get a response. But you have to trust it. You have to trust your imagination. You know, there's a passage in Baha'i writings. The Baha'is are very keen to think about, beware of vain imaginings and idle fancies. But if you don't trust your imagination, how is God going to communicate with you? How is your grandmother or someone in the spiritual realm going to let you hear their voice if you're not listening for that voice? So when you're meditating, when you're asking for guidance, that's a very powerful way to pray. But first, I find I've got to empty my cup. I've got to say, this is how I'm really feeling. This is what I'm afraid of. This is what I want. I very often pray that God will help me to not be driven by my own ego, but led by my soul, meaning whatever his will is, let me infuse that into my will. Because the highest kind of prayer is to trust that God knows what you really need. And he may not always give us what we want, but he does give us what we need. Because we're here to learn and grow. So one of the things you need to find out, and this is really an enjoyable kind of experiment, I think, is to see if you're more of an auditory person. When you say a prayer, do you listen and do you hear a thought? Because the thought will come to you very strongly. I need to write it in my journal, and these days I need to do it so I won't forget what was said to me. Are you a visual person? Are you someone that needs to be moving? For over 30 years, I've been spiritual director of a Catholic nun, and she is my spiritual director. And we have these wonderful sessions where we each have a turn and we share our prayer life and what's going on in our lives. And I've learned a lot from her. And she once told me that she was having tremendous trouble with the kind of very rigorous meditation that was required of the nuns in her order. And I said, Judy, you know that God speaks to you much more when you're moving. She's a very athletic person. She rides a bike, she runs, she not anymore, but she swims. And that is when God speaks to her. And I said, you need some mercy on yourself. That may not be your way, your medium. So, we all learn in different ways and we all receive guidance in different ways. So the other thing is, people say, I wish God would give me a sign. Well, the Quran says how many a sign there is that most men pass by and ignore. There are many signs that come, but if we're not open to it, if we're not looking for it, we're going to miss it. So one of the things in that arena of service, because service is prayer, I've had some of my most wonderful experiences of confirmed guidance when I have begged God to let me serve. One time I was, have my time. I don't want to go too long. Let's see. Alex, could you tell me about how much time I have?
Don't worry. If you want to take another 10 to 15 here.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All
That's
good.
helpful. That's helpful. I want to quote from Jalaluddin Rumi, who is one of my favorite poets, and he's a Sufi mystic, a Muslim. And he says, let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. So I have to say that an important part of the prayer process is also, before I tell you this story, is a virtues pick. And we have them on, there's a virtues card app, there's virtues cards that you could get. But it's a way of deepening yourself in the meaning of the virtues. And this is one of the gifts of the Virtues Project. So one day I was really longing to practice the virtue of service. And I had just had a baby, and the baby was sleeping all the time, and I was at home, and I was bored to tears. I just wanted to do something meaningful. I cuddled the baby and he fell asleep, and then I washed the kitchen floor and I said, I'm dedicating this to you, God. I'm being clean. It just wasn't enough. And so I said, I'm really longing to make a difference today. So I took the baby and I got in the car, and the car wended its way through these streets where I had never been. This was in a very rural place in northern New Jersey. And I came to a big building that was a reconditioned bowling alley. And I walked in, I brought the baby and I walked in, I could hear people screaming. And I walked in and I said, what's going on in here? And they said, there's a boy locked in the bathroom and he's threatening to kill himself. I said, well, I can help. So I handed the baby to this woman and I went up to the door and everybody was yelling at him, no, you shouldn't do that. It's sin, and all these other things. And I said, shh. And everybody quieted down. And I said, what's his name? Billy. I said, Billy, what's going on? And I could hear him crying. I said, what are your tears? And I started companioning him, which is one of the virtue strategies. And it turned out that he was having terrible identity problems. He was very depressed. He was experiencing racism. He was being ostracized by his community. He came out and he fell into my arms. And he was the first young person in a youth group that I started the next week. And he became like the leader of the youth. And he really found his purpose. Now, how did I know to go there? I asked and God answered. And you need to have faith that if you ask to be allowed to be of service, you will receive an answer and you'll be guided. Now, what I'd like to do is put up the virtue of reverence that really summarizes a lot of these things. And again, I want to say something about the 18. Well, Dara's looking for that. We all have an 18. We have our ancestors, we have our angels, including the angels of virtue, and we have advisors. So I'd like to ask maybe if someone could, Alex, can you unmute someone if they are able to read the virtue? Someone volunteer?
Yeah, I'm happy to read it.
Oh, thank you.
Reverence. Reverence is living with an awareness that we are always in the presence of the Creator and that all life is precious. When we practice reverence, we open ourselves to experience faith, love, and deep respect for the mysteries and wonders of life. We take time in solitude and silence each day to contemplate, to pray, and reflect. We seek to discern the deeper meanings of our life. The beauty of nature restores our souls. We are respectful stewards of the earth. We treasure all life. Affirmation of life is a spiritual act by which man ceases to live unreflectively and begins to devote himself to his life with reverence in order to raise it to its true value. Albert Schweitzer. The practice of reverence. I take time each day to nurture my inner life. I open my soul to life's wonders. I live with an awareness of divine presence. I discern the meaning of my experiences. I allow beauty to nurture my soul. I respect the value of all life. I am thankful for the gift of reverence. It consecrates my life.
Lindy, thank you for reading that with such reverence. So friends, to summarize, before I would like to do an exercise here, if that would be all right with Dr. B and Alex. I'm wondering if we would have time for people to share their own response to that virtue and get into rooms, separate rooms, breakout rooms, in order to share, maybe in groups of 3. Alex, is that going to work for you?
Yeah, we can do that.
Oh, great. Okay, first I want to share, if each person could take a turn sharing, how does this, what you've heard today, speak to you? When is a time that you have felt as if you're in a spiritual presence or the presence of the Creator? And what was that like? Or when did you feel guided? And as each person shares, please, the other two, be very, very quiet. There's no discussion. It's just a receptive listening. And when they finish, I would ask that you give them a virtue's acknowledgement. Tell them something, a virtue you see in them, or you can say, thank you for your openness in sharing. So, friends, let's get into these rooms. And again, I think the reverence might be in the chat box.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And share, how does that card speak to you? How does that virtue resonate with you at this time in your life? And so taking turns, listening in silence, giving a virtue's acknowledgement, or just thanking the person for their openness. So let's just take maybe 3 minutes each, so 9 minutes altogether. That would be wonderful. And thanks, Alex, for your helpfulness.